telling us some of the greatest bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pertaining to those that we depend on our guidance for, the Quran, those that we depend on our existence for, such as the ability to speak, and all the things around us, the earth, the sky, the systems within the earth and the sky and the waters, and the trees, and the numerous systems of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded us that all of this is temporary. It's all going to come to an end. And after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take all the human beings and all the jinns to task for everything that they have done. And on that day, people will appear in the shape of the deeds that they used to do. Their deeds will be reflected on their faces and through the conditions that they are raised on the Day of Judgment. And for those who will be deemed as criminals in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will not need to be asked about their sins. Their sins will be apparent. And after that point, they will be running between the fire of Jahannam and the boiling water of Jahannam. There is nothing else for them. But now, as we move forward in the surah, from verse 46, the Quran gives us the picture on the other side for those people who spent their lives with the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not fear as a person would fear someone who is out to get them, fear someone who is out to harm them. This is not what is meant by the fear of Allah. The fear of Allah is the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the awareness of His grandeur, the awareness of His power and His might, and the awareness of all the things He is doing for us and He has done for us. The awareness of His mercy, and at the same time the awareness of accountability to Him, and that He is capable of holding us responsible for everything we have done. So one who fears, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ, the one who fears the maqam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And maqam is interpreted as either the status of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the station of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the ultimate creator, the master, the ultimate being, or the maqam in the meaning of standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who spends their life fearing the reckoning, fearing giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala an account of one's life. And in light of this awareness, in light of this worry, they spend their lives. Obviously, their life is going to be very different. Your life is going to be within the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're going to be afraid to touch those limits or even go close to them. They're not going to make themselves available to all those activities that people who don't have this awareness are engaging in. They're going to keep themselves relatively restricted. They're going to keep themselves within those boundaries and observe many things. They're going to take upon themselves many duties that perhaps others won't be fulfilling. And they're going to stay away from many other things that people perhaps are not abstaining from. But the result of this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give them the highest status, depending on how much of this awareness they had, and depending on how strictly they adhered to the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is the kind of rank they are going to get. So these people are the muqarrabeen. These people are the sabiqeen. As-sabiqoon, as-sabiqoon. Ulaika al-muqarrabun. These are the ones that are running forward. They're rushing forward ahead of everyone else. They're not just getting by, doing the bare minimum, getting away with the bare necessities. As-sabiqoon, as-sabiqoon. Ulaika al-muqarrabun. Those are the ones who are rushing forward. On the Day of Judgment, they shall be forward. Those that move forward shall be forward on the Day of Judgment, and they will be the muqarrabeen, those that are brought closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, based on that, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ, these people will get not one Jannah, but two Jannahs. And Jannah literally means garden. And the garden of Jannah is not like a garden that one would imagine. These are whole worlds. Every garden is a whole world, is a whole universe within itself. If you look at the hadith, the Sahih hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ says, the last person to enter Jannah, the last person after having been through Jahannam and suffered for their mistakes and their sins, and everyone else was released, this was the last person to be released from Jahannam. They had perhaps only a speck of Iman in their heart. They will get a paradise that is 10 times the size of this world. 10 times the size of this world. So imagine how immense those gardens are going to be. These are not gardens that you go for a stroll in, and after 10-15 minutes the garden comes to an end. This is a whole universe. So 2 such gardens. The terms used in the Quran are for our understanding. Otherwise, the reality of those gardens and of those bounties is far beyond our imagination. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Hadith Qudsi, أَعْدَدْتُ لِعِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحِينَ مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذُنٌ سَمِعَتْ وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. I have prepared for my pious slaves that which no eye has seen, no ear has heard of, and no heart has imagined. Imagine as you want, imagine as far as you can. The bounties of Jannah are far beyond that. وَفِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِيهِ الْأَنفُسُ وَتَلَذُّ الْأَعْيُنُ. And in that is all of those things that a person could desire. مَا تَشْتَهِيهِ الْأَنفُسُ. Everything that you could possibly wish for, desire. وَتَلَذُّ الْأَعْيُنُ. And all of those things that would please your eyes. All of those things that are pleasant to look at. Allah has all of those things in store. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So here in this world, it's better that you thank Allah for the bounties that He has given you, so that He gives you much more in akhirah. Which of the bounties of Allah are you going to deny? Then the description of those Jannahs. A few glimpses. ذَوَاتَ أَفْنَانِ. A garden has trees. The trees in Jannah are going to be filled with branches. Dhawata afnan, filled with branches. So plenty of branches means 2 things. It means A, plenty of shade, and B, it means plenty of fruits. The more branches there are, the more fruits there are going to be. You have a tree with only a few branches, so the quantity of fruits that tree bears is also going to be very limited. So filled with branches, heavily laden with branches, which means heavily laden with fruits, and that is discussed up ahead. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ. In this Jannah, there are going to be 2 special springs, 2 special rivers given. There are many rivers flowing through Jannah. 4 of them are mentioned in Surah Muhammad. أَنْهَارٌ مِّن مَّاءٍ غَيْرِ آسٍ. Water that never stagnates. أَنْهَارٌ مِّن لَبَنٍ لَمْ يَتَغَيَّرْ طَعْمُهُ. Rivers of milk, the taste of which never changes. أَنْهَارٌ مِّن خَمْرٍ لَذَّةٍ لِلشَّارِبِينَ. Rivers of wine which will be nothing but pleasure for those who drink it. لَا يُصَدَّعُونَ عَنْهَا وَلَا يُنزِفُونَ. It will not bring them a headache. It will not cloud their judgment. Rivers of wine that are just for the sake of the pleasure of drinking. وَأَنْهَارٌ مِّنْ عَسَلٍ مُصَفَّى. And rivers of honey, clear honey. The water of Jannah, the water flowing through those rivers is not melted from ice. It's not flowing from another river. It is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the people of Jannah. It is unlike any water that we know of. The milk is not coming from the bellies of animals. It is a milk created for the people of Jannah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Its name is milk. Its name is milk, but the reality of it is much different from any milk that we know of. Now, the wine is not going to come from fermented grapes or other substances. It is called wine, but it is a substance completely different. Honey is not going to come from the bellies of bees. It is called honey, It might resemble honey, but it is something completely different. So these are some of the standard rivers we read in the Quran. تجري من تحتها الأنهار جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار. Repeatedly, these are gardens beneath which rivers are flowing. The rivers constantly flowing. The Quran describes these rivers. So those were four. And then there are other streams. Streams, tasneem, salsabil. These are special streams of water that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, or streams carrying specific types of drinks that the people of Jannah are going to be drinking from. And يَشْرَبُونَ مِنْ كَأْسٍ كَانَ مِزَاجُهَا كَافُورًا عَيْنًا فِيهَا. So there's going to be drinks from these streams. Some of these drinks are going to have a mixture of camphor. Some are going to have a mixture of zanjabil, of ginger, and رَحِيقٍ مَخْتُومٍ خِتَامُهُ misk, nectar which is sealed with a stamp, with a seal of musk. So these are the beverages that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for the people of Jannah. But in this Jannah, aside from all of these, there are going to be two special streams flowing freely. Tajriyan, flowing freely. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. And in these two gardens, مِن كُلِّ فَاكِهَةٍ زَوْجَانِ. From every fruit, there will be two types. From every kind of fruit, there will be two types. So every tree that is bearing fruit, and the fruit of Jannah, there's going to be many different types. Some of them are named. Nakhl, there's going to be date trees. Rumman, there's going to be pomegranate. Talh, there's going to be bananas. And Inab, there's going to be grapes. And there's going to be all kinds of fruits. And when people see these fruits, they're going to say, yes, we used to know about these fruits in dunya. And when these fruits will be brought and they'll be told these are the fruits, they're going to say, yeah, we used to know about these fruits. But when they taste them, it's going to be something completely different. And with each bite, with each morsel, the taste is going to be enhanced. It's going to keep changing and getting better and better and better. And people will eat not because they're hungry. There is no hunger. There is no thirst in Jannah. There's only desire. They'll have an appetite based on their desire. So they will eat as much as they want. And they will stop eating when they feel like doing something else. And وَجَنَى الْجَنَّتَيْنِ دَانٍ, this is coming up ahead, that the fruits of Jannah are going to be hanging low. The Quran says, وَذُلِّلَتْ قُطُوفُهَا تَذْلِيلًا. The fruits will be made to hang low. Very easy to grasp. A person will desire it, the branch will lower itself right to him. All he will have to do is pluck it, pull it off. You won't have to go looking for fruits. You won't have to go climbing trees. You won't have to go shaking branches. It's going to come down to you. All you have to do is take it. So min kulli fakiyatin zawjan, every fruit, every type of fruit is going to be in pairs. What kind of pairs? So two different types of every single fruit. So let's say, for example, there are grapes, and the grapes of Jannah are going to be different. One grape is going to be massive, immense grapes. So some people like fruits to be very ripe, and some people like them to be a little less ripe. But based on your preference, you'll get two types of fruits on every single tree. Some people, some of us have said that every fruit will be given in a fresh form, in a dried form, whichever one you want. Or fruit with two distinct flavors. You like that fruit very sweet, you like it sour as well. You'll get both. However you want it to be, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide you. مُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى فُرُشٍ بَطَائِنُهَا مِنْ إِسْتَبْرَقٍ. These people are going to be reclining reclining on couches. The linings of these couches are going to be of silk brocade. So while they are lying down on these couches, relaxing, leaning, the fruit is going to come to them. وَجَنَى الْجَنَّتَيْنِ دَانٍ. The fruit is going to come. So they won't have to get up to get their fruit. They'll be lying there, the branches will extend and come to them. Whatever they desire, they will not even have to ask. They will only have to think. And as they think, it will become a reality for them. فِيهِنَّ قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ لَمْ يَطْمِثْهُنَّ إِنسٌ قَبْلَهُمْ وَلَا جَانٌ. The wives, the maidens of Jannah, will be such who will keep their gazes low, keep their gazes restrained. They will not have seen any other man, nor will any other being have approached them. إِنَّا أَنشَأْنَاهُنَّ إِنشَاءً فَجَعَلْنَاهُنَّ أَبْكَارًا عُرُبًا أَتْرَابًا لِأَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will recreate them. The women of Jannah, when the women of Dunya, when they enter into Jannah, they're going to come the completely new, with a new existence. And those women who lived here in this world and abided by the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be joined with their husbands in Akhirah, in Jannah, and they will be given preference in all aspects over the other maidens of Jannah. So they will be more beautiful, more charming, more attractive, and they will have a much higher status. And they will tell the other women of Jannah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for the men of Jannah, that we are higher than you because we used to fast, you haven't fasted. We used to pray, you haven't prayed. We used to have patience, you've never been patient. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give them a completely different status. So the women of this dunya need not have a complex or need not feel insecure about their position in Jannah. Those women who were pious in this dunya, fulfilled the haqq of Allah, fulfilled the haqq of their husbands and the haqq of their children, and whatever duties Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed upon them, they will be far above these other hurul ain that we read about in the Quran. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. And Allah describes them كَأَنَّهُنَّ الْيَاقُوتُ وَالْمَرْجَانِ. They will be like rubies and small pearls. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. Can there be a reward for doing good other than good in return? Ihsan means to endeavor to perfect something. These people, this first category that is being discussed, were those who didn't just try to do what was needed, they tried to perfect their deen. They tried to perfect the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They pushed themselves beyond the norm, beyond what the people around them were doing. So they went out of their way to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Will Allah not do the same for them? So their Jannah is going to be perfected. So they, from their side, there was ihsan, perfection of their beliefs, of their bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of their worships, of the way they manage themselves. So Allah is going to give them nothing less than perfection itself. هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. So these were the muqarrabeen, the elite people. وَمِن دُونِهِمَا جَنَّتَانِ. Aside from this, there will be another set of gardens. Now some mufassirin have said that the word dun here, it means less than or lower than. Beneath this, there will be another set of gardens. So like in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, the Quran just divides the people who are entering into Jannah into two categories, the muqarrabeen and ashabul yameen. Those that were at utmost nearness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those that will be entering, the people of the right side, those that are going to enter into Jannah, but their status is not the same as those of muqarrabeen. Regarding the muqarrabeen, Allah says, ثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنَ الْآخِرِينَ. A large group from the first people, meaning the early Muslims. The early Muslims will form the largest part of that category. And from those who come afterwards, they will also reach there, but they will be smaller in numbers. So, السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار. Of course, these people will take precedence. They will have the preference in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those people, خير القرون قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best of generations, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, is mine, those that are alive at my time. After that, second to that is those that come after them. And after that, those that come after them. So these people will be the largest numbers of the muqarrabeen. And then there will be people who come after them, but they won't have that quality. They won't have those characteristics, those sacrifices, that level of devotion. Amongst them, every now and then you'll see someone like that, so they will also be included. And the next, the people of the Yameen, Ashabul Yameen, ثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْآخِرِينَ. From the first generations, there will be people in large numbers, and from the later generations, there will also be people in large numbers. So وَمِن دُونِهِمَا جَنَّتَانِ, beneath that, another set of gardens. It's referring to Ashabul Yameen, those that will come after that first category of people. جَنَّتَانِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ مُدْهَامَّتَانِ. The description of this set of gardens, they'll be dark green in color. Dark green, when vegetation is dark green, it is an indication that that vegetation is getting everything that it needs. It's been nurtured and nourished with all the sunlight, or all the water, and all of the things that it needs, therefore giving its rich dark green color. So they will be very dark in color. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ نَضَّاخَتَانِ. In this set of gardens, there will be two streams that are gushing. So in the first one, it said flowing freely. In this one, gushing. We read from Sahaba that first set of streams is going to be much finer, much higher than this second set of streams. Because gushing forward, gushing could be something that applies to any stream. But when a stream is flowing freely throughout the entire Jannah, throughout the entire garden, and some narrations mention that those streams and rivers will flow in whatever direction you want them to. They will turn and change course as per your needs and as per your convenience. عَيْنٍ يَشْرَبُ بِهَا الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. The Quran talks about some streams that only the muqarrabeen will be allowed to drink from. And then there will be others that the abrar will be drinking from. إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ يَشْرَبُونَ مِنْ كَأْسٍ كَانَ مِزَاجُهَا كَافُورًا. So these streams will be for the other people who enter into Jannah, gushing forth. فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ. There will be different kinds of fruits, namely date palms, namely pomegranates. So these are some of the types of fruits. So there will be select fruits in this Jannah. About the first one, Allah says, مِن كُلِّ فَاكِهَةٍ زَوْجَانِ. You will have every type of fruit, and from every type, there'll be two kinds. And here it says there will be fruits. And as example, there'll be date palms and there will be pomegranates. It's not restricted to these because it says already fakiha, there's going to be fruits, but it doesn't say every kind of fruit. That is reserved for the first level. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ فِيهِنَّ خَيْرَاتٌ حِسَانٌ. And regarding the women in this level of Jannah, Allah calls them khayrat. It's from khair. This reflects their character. Women of beautiful character. Hisan, of beautiful features. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ حُورٌ مَقْصُورَاتٌ فِي الْخِيَامِ. These are women that are guarded in the pavilions of Jannah. So they are guarded. They are kept, protected so that no one can see them. In the first one, قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ. They are keeping themselves restrained. They don't need anyone to restrain them. So that is for the higher level of Jannah. And here, this is also something exquisite, but they will be guarded and protected. مَقْصُورَاتٌ فِي الْخِيَامِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ لَمْ يَطْمِثْهُنَّ إِنسٌ قَبْلَهُمْ وَلَا جَانٌ. No human, no jinn has gone to them before, has had intimacy with them before. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ مُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى رَفْرَفٍ خُضْرٍ وَعَبْقَرِيٍّ حِسَانٍ. These people will be reclining like the previous ones. They were also reclining on fancy couches lined with silk brocade. And here they will be reclining on cushions that are green and on beautiful carpets or on beautiful mattresses. These people will also be reclining, enjoying themselves. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ تَبَارَكَ اسْمُ رَبِّكَ ذِي الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Glorified is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Glorified is the name of your Lord. Very high is the name of your Lord. The name of your Lord is high, so imagine how high Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself must be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has names that are filled with beautiful attributes, powerful attributes, glorious attributes. Dhil jalali wal ikram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one of glory and the one of majesty, the one of honor. So people are going to be entering into Jannah based on their fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their abstinence from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. This is the first step of getting close to Jannah. Leaving those things that are disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person cannot get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while engaging in things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden. So the first step to Jannah is to leave that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden, to leave the haram. A person goes to the acts of worship, a person goes to the fara'id, but at the same time they're engaging in the muharramat. So the muharramat are undoing this good that they are doing. It's like somebody filling a sack that has a hole in it. You keep filling it, but it keeps emptying itself. Ali radiallahu anhu describes the glory and the beauty with which people will be entering into Jannah. They're not just going to be walking into Jannah. And there are ahadith, ahadith from the Prophet ﷺ that describe how they're going to enter into Jannah. But Ali radiallahu anhu in one hadith reported by Ibn Abi Dunya and Al-Bayhaqi describes how when they will come out of their graves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make easy for them the whole process of hisab, of hashr. So then there will be camels, white winged camels waiting for them. Of course, not like the camels of this dunya. And these people will be given a new dress, new shoes, and these shoes will be such that every step that they take will take them as far as their eyes can see. And then they will be made to ride on these camels who will take them to a place before Jannah where there is a tree. At the base of that tree there are two rivers. And so they will go and wash themselves in the first one, or drink from the first one. And the moment they take a drink from that first one, the beauty of Jannah will appear in their faces. إِذَا شَرِبُوا مِنَ الْأُولَى جَرَتْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ بِنَضْرَةِ النَّعِيمِ. The radiance of Jannah will appear in their faces. And when they drink from the second one, لَمْ تَشْعَثْ أَشْعَارُهُمْ أَبَدًا. They will be perfectly groomed. Perfectly groomed. So what will happen? Their bodies will be beautified. The men will no longer have facial hair. They will become young, handsome. Women will become beautiful in a youthful age. And everything about them will become perfect. they will never ever have to be groomed after that day. Their hair will never get messy. And hair is the first thing that gets messy about a person. It's the first part of your appearance that gets messy. So if their hair will never get messy, you can imagine about the rest of their bodies. They're going to be taken to this perfect physical state. Tall, ala surati abihim Adam. And the height and the stature, the physique of Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. And then they're going to be taken to Jannah. And the doors of Jannah, there are two levels of entering into Jannah. One is entry into the place of paradise. The place of paradise, about which we are told there are so many doors. These are the gates of Jannah. And this is the door for the people of Siyam. This is the door for the people of this act, and the people of this act, the people of this act. These are the general gates of Jannah. And every one of these gates, Hadith explains, is so vast that if 100,000 people were to enter at once, standing side by side, there will still be much room on the sides. If 100,000 people were to enter it all at once, it would be very easy for them to enter without being crowded, without bumping into one another. And then from there, they will be led to their personal Jannah. So the descriptions of Jannah are given in great detail in the books of Hadith. And these descriptions have been given to us because A, this place actually exists, first of all. And B, this is the ultimate goal of a mu'min, to go to Jannah, not to enjoy himself, but because that is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him the guarantee of His pleasure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call the people of Jannah and ask them how they are. Are you happy? Of course. Oh Allah, why wouldn't be happy? Look at how radiant you've made our faces, and look at all the bounties you have given us. Why would we not be happy? So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow them to see Him. He will remove all the veils, all the curtains, and allow them to see Him. And that, the enjoyment, the pleasure and the ecstasy of seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Almighty, will exceed and excel all the pleasures that they have experienced up till this point. Allah will allow them to experience the pleasures of Jannah first. Go enjoy yourselves. After this, He will call them. And then when He will remove the veils and they will see Him, that will make them forget about all the bounties of Jannah. And they will be in this state of ecstasy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them if they want something even more than this. And they will think, what could possibly be more than this? This is the ultimate, everything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, أُحِلُّ عَلَيْكُمْ رِضْوَانِي فَلَا أَسْخَطُ عَلَيْكُمْ بَعْدَهُ أَبَدًا. From today, I am making my pleasure, my contentment halal for you. I will never be displeased with you after this. Never be displeased. That will be the ultimate stamp. That will be the ultimate stamp that the believers have been seeking. And there will be a part of them, and there is a part of a believer that remains unfulfilled. There's a void that cannot be fulfilled but when they know that Allah is pleased with me. No bounty of Jannah can fill that void. Because this is what a believer is ultimately striving for. The pleasure of Allah. وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. Allah describes the bounties of Jannah and He says, wait. The pleasure of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with you, it is bigger than all of these bounties put together. And thus, in a state of complete bliss, complete satisfaction from every aspect, they will remain forever and ever and ever. And permanence Forever, this is something that we cannot understand. It is beyond our grasp. It is beyond our scope. Like Imam Ghazali rahimahullah gives an example. It's a famous example that if the whole world, all the space between the earth and the sky was to be filled with seeds, mustard seeds, and every 500 years or every 1,000 years, a bird comes and picks one seed, how long would it take for these seeds to finish? Allah knows, trillions, trillions, and trillions of years. Allah knows. Yani, you fill the whole gap between the earth and the sky with these mustard seeds, and a bird is coming once every 500 years or every 1,000 years to take just one seed, and it's not going to come again for another millennium. He says even those seeds will be finished one day. But abad, foreverness, is beyond that even. The life of akhirah will not end even then. So for that permanent life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a short time. And in this short time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equipped us with many, many things. Many things He has given us that enable us to use our time in the best way possible. But ultimately, it's up to us how we use that time. And time is the most valuable asset that we have. So it should not be that this precious time passes us by, slips through our fingers like sand that we are holding, trying to hold on to, but we can't. It's going to slip through our fingers. But once it's gone, it's gone. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all of those bounties prepared for people who pass this test of time, who apply themselves, use whatever Allah has given them in the best way possible. This is why He keeps asking, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ? Which of the bounties, what is there that you haven't been provided with? You've been given everything. And this surah, Al-Rahman, is the ultimate reminder that it is through using the things that we already have that we will get that. It's not through acquiring the things that we don't have. Allah has given us whatever we need in order to acquire that. There's nothing that's missing. It is all available to us provided that we use it. Intelligence is there. Physical ability is there. Everything is there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only holds a person accountable to the extent that He has given him ability. A person is only accountable based on the range of the ability Allah has given them. He is not accountable for something that is beyond his range. So if a person's ability is limited, then they only have to work in that limited scope. They don't have to do what a person with greater ability has to do. A person with greater ability has to do more. A person with more ability has to do even more. And based on what Allah has given us in terms of mind power, in terms of physical strength, in terms of the things, the bounties that we have around us, based on that we have to work. So there is nothing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demands from us that is not in our capacity. But at least what is in our capacity must be done. And it must be done only for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we do the deeds, engage in the right activities, but for the wrong reasons, then they're all null and void. In the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're all gone to waste. Why? Because it wasn't done for that reason. It wasn't done for that reason, then there's no ihsan in it. And so ihsan cannot be the compensation for it either. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to reflect on these beautiful verses and allow ourselves to mold into that lifestyle that will grant us all of these things, that will result in all of these things. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our shortcomings. We are going through the blessed 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, and many promises have been made by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this, and these are the most beloved days of the year for good deeds in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let us apply ourselves and try to do the best that we can. Maybe a little bit of sacrifice, maybe fighting a little bit of our laziness or a bit of our stepping a little bit out of our comfort zone. But let's do whatever we can to make these days count. And then inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to compensate us in full.
Inshallah.
وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم.